All right. Hey, what's going on, class? So for our podcast and presentation, we've decided to do the film La Vita e Bella, directed and starring Roberto Benigni. The film won Best Actor and Best Foreign Film in the 1999 Academy Awards. This film is great. It will make you laugh, cry, smile, frown, everything. And the film is a Holocaust film following Guido Orefici and his family's horrific ordeal through the Holocaust. It is a very popular film, but it has often been highly criticized for, some feel it's just a little insensitive, that it's just too humorous for a Holocaust film.
Roberto Benigni, that sounds so familiar.
Yeah, Roberto Benigni was actually born in a small city in Italy called Mancinio la Misericordia. He started his theater career in 1971, acting in and directing many films like La Vita e Bella. Most of his movies are comedic, but they do have a serious side to them. Roberto stars in many movies. Most of them are international, but he does do a movie in the United States called Down by the Law. In this movie, he played an innocent foreigner that lives in the United States that has been convicted of manslaughter. He uses his humor and optimism to escape and find love.
All right, so before we get down into the real heart of the story, let's just introduce our main characters. So first and foremost, we have Guido. Guido is a poor man who moves to Tuscany to become a waiter at his uncle's restaurant and hotel. Guido has this amazing sense of humor and optimism that really allows him to get the most out of life.
Next we have Dora, and Dora is an elementary school teacher from Tuscany, Italy, who we learn falls in love with Guido for the characteristics Paul just described. And she comes from a very rich family, and she was actually set to be married to a rich politician who her mother really wanted her to get with. And Dora is unhappy with her current life plans, and she's clearly not in love with this politician who is actually pretty bad because he agrees with the Nazi ideals and that's his political agenda, and he also lets work consume his life. And then Dora would be rather be happy in life, so she decides to run away with Guido and then cuts all ties with her mom.
And then last but not least, we have their adorable 5-year-old son, Joshua. So he's the son of Guido and Dora. He's very intelligent for his age, very quirky. Throughout the film, one of his unfaltering characteristics is his stubbornness, which we kind of end up seeing almost helps him in his survival throughout the whole Holocaust. Just like any little boy, he's very innocent. And Guido's father makes sure to keep that innocence intact throughout their whole ordeal.
So what is going on at the beginning of the movie, actually?
So during this time period, in the beginning of the movie, we see a tour in Europe over the issue of anti-Semitism. And the League of Nations, what a fun group they were, that they pretty much just stood there and watched it all happen. They essentially gave Hitler the 5-year-old finger wag, no, don't do it. But Hitler goes, you're not really going to stop me? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and continue anyway. And so they essentially just stood by to this genocide. And you even see with the Treaty of Versailles tried to demilitarize Germany, and they took away parts of land both gained in World War I and just basic German lands in general. And then they had to pay $47 billion in reparations, I believe it was. And so Hitler says, forget all that. I'm not paying this. I'm not sitting here and letting my country fall down, because Germany went into this huge depression after World War I. And so he militarized. He started to spread out through the continent of Europe. And then we see as he goes along, he starts to put these Jewish people inside concentration camps.
Which unfortunately we see happens to Guido and Joshua in the film. They're put on the train, taken away from their homes and from Tuscany, and then their journey begins throughout the concentration camps.
We even see him start going down into Italy, which most people will associate with Mussolini and his fascist ideals just as well as Hitler's. The two were great buds, and
they're homeboys.
And
boys.
And the Jewish people throughout the whole continent of Europe, wherever Hitler went, whether it was to the Rhineland or whether he went to France, you saw that the Jewish people were just being taken, and any type of contribution they made was just thrown into the dumpster. And essentially he called their science pseudoscience and said that it didn't make sense, we're the superior race, we know what's best, these Jewish people don't. And we even see this in the movie when Guido and Joshua are walking through the town, and on the one sign on the door, it says no Jews or dogs.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. So, long story short, excuse me. This film follows the Orefice's family's journey throughout this horrendous ordeal, one of the worst in human history. And the movie's words is a fable of sorrow, but also of happiness and joy. So throughout this whole, horrific event, we see humor, optimism, and love prevail against all the odds. And pretty much Guido, to protect his son's innocence, portrays the Holocaust as a birthday getaway to a hide-and-seek competition, which the winner gets a real-life tank, which is also Joshua's favorite toy. So Guido's wild sense of humor and optimism is really what keeps the two alive.
But then what did Guido specifically do to maintain this game?
On the one scene when the correctional officer comes into the barracks, he asks someone to translate from German, to the Italians, so he can explain the rules of the concentration camp. And Guido, runs and he volunteers, but instead of actually translating into German, which he doesn't know, he explains the game. So when he's up there, he's sitting, and he's literally talking straight to Joshua, explaining, oh, this is a game, it's not supposed to be scary, he's explaining the rules of the game to Joshua.
Yeah, things like you can't miss your mom, and a lot of lollipops. If you complain for a snack, you lose, 10 points, something like that.
Yeah, he also told him that he had to be completely silent, and so that way he wouldn't talk to the other kids. And I think because he knew that if he talked to the other kids would tell him that the game wasn't real, and it would all kind of be ruined.
And we even see at some points that Joshua seems to have this kind of regret or this inner feeling of something being wrong, and so he tries to get Guido to leave, but at the same time Guido knows they can't leave. So he tricks Joshua into staying by telling him, if you leave, you're going to lose the tank. We're in first place right now. The people behind us, I guess, will be pretty happy to take that tank.
So how exactly does this movie pertain to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, like we learned in class?
So as we know, the UDHR was a milestone document that they made after World War II, and then also they also did because of World War I. And the UDHR outlines everyone in the world's population, or everyone in the world's equal right to religion, freedom, and among other basic human rights. And there's actually no greater disregard to human rights than the Third Reich's attempted extermination of Jews and other minority groups. And this movie relates to this document in that it completely disregards it. And the SS mercilessly imprisoned millions of different cultures that they thought were less than them, than the Aryan race, and they systematically eliminated these groups of people. And this movie clearly shows that once because they were thrown into a concentration camp.
Yeah, I know we also talked about feminism in class, and I think that the scene where Dora sacrifices herself, I think that could be considered feminism. What do you think?
For sure, yeah. One could definitely argue that Dora exemplifies feminist qualities when she volunteers to go aboard the train along with her family. And in the 1940s, feminism was displayed pretty greatly with women were volunteering for to be nurses and on the lines, and Rosie the Riveter and stuff, and they were taking paid jobs to support their families. And Dora's feminist traits are more so shown when she just defies the Nazi soldier who tells her to leave, because he's basically hinting to her they're gonna die, you're not Jewish, don't abort. And she just is screw you, and she goes on the train and follows her family because it's the right thing to do. And that's really feminist. It's also just courageous in that aspect.
Wait, can you explain the UDHR a little bit more? I'm kind of confused how it relates to that.
So with Hitler, we see that he kind of defies and sees himself above as the policies of the UDHR. He doesn't feel he needs to give people the same amount of freedoms, and he feels as if we're doing this for the country. You need to follow me for the good of the country and not put your own selfish needs into this. And we even see that when he presents propaganda in Germany, he's standing above these crowds of Germans and he's leading them through the depression that they had, like I said, at the end of World War I, and now trying to lead them into this new era during World War II. And when you see in these also pieces of propaganda, he has like the shimmering light around him that like gives him this godly figure.
Strange that you say that, because the lighting in the scenes where it's like more Holocaust related, they tend to be much darker than other scenes, like compared to the ones in Italy.
Like the night Guido was shot, and then like after while they're showing that, they also show the anticipating shot of Guido hiding. We don't know if where Josh was hiding, but we don't know if he's gonna actually be found. And those were both filmed in very dark lighting, and they were both like at nighttime, which makes sense.
Yeah, I know this scene happened like a little earlier than that, but I really need to point it out because it's like a lot of great film technique is used here. So after after Guido, serves as a waiter for Dr. Lessing, like the Nazis, he's walking back with Josue, and it's a horrible night out. It's the dead of winter. There's this eerie, mysterious fog, and Guido's saying to Josue, he's gonna go, right, I can't wait to see your mother again. And then he comes across this pile of dead bodies, and it's just awful. And there's so much blue in the scene, and I know it was dead of winter, but there's just snow all over the ground, and it really just hammers in the symbol of death and hopelessness.
Yeah, I noticed that when it was dark outside or like nighttime, bad things usually happened. And the camera shots also distinguish the difference between like the time when the characters were in Italy compared to when they were in the concentration camps. And I think that different camera shots also help the viewer know like how much time was actually passing, like if it was the same day or if it was like later at the concentration camp and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I also noticed there was a reverse shot in the film, or one of them, and it shows Guido looking out of his window at the same time Dora's looking out of her window, and they're both in the same concentration camp, but they still don't know where each other are. But it like goes from like Guido's face to Dora's face, so it kind of shows how they're connected, but they still don't know it yet.
Yeah. I could totally tell the difference also between like the costuming and stuff from when they were in Italy to when they were in the concentration camps, like how drastically different it seemed to be.
Yeah, when they were in Italy, they were really clean and healthy and well dressed, and they had this perfect little cute life. And then when they got to the concentration camp, they were dirty. They didn't get food. They were like, Guido was like working all day, like carrying like that big metal thing. So they were just like disheveled. They weren't that clean.
They looked really sick.
Yeah.
And I think the sets in the concentration camp also like seemed extremely real to me. Like I think that they were really historically accurate, and the placement of the props made me feel, at least, like I was like really in the movie. Like it really kind of drew me in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one of the main props that really stood out to me was the tank at the end of the movie. This legendary real tank. That Josue is about to win, and he thought it was real. He didn't understand. He's just a little boy. The Americans were really liberating camp, but to him it was the best day of his life. He just won this tank. So having a real tank, coming in the end, really, really tied all the props together really well.
Yeah, I think the tank played a really important role throughout the entire film. I think it's one of the main, if not the main, symbols throughout the film. And it also helped keep Joshua alive to a certain extent. From the very beginning, we see a scene where he's playing with his favorite toy, and it's a toy tank. So it only makes sense that at the end, his prize is an actual real-life tank. And that idea is what kept Joshua motivated to behave so he could win the game that his father told him about, so he basically survived. So in a way, the tank saved his life.
Yeah, what other forms of symbolism did you guys like seem to find throughout the movie?
Well, most likely the obvious one was the Nazi symbol, the Nazi flag, and how Guido tried to place this emphasis on it for Joshua, saying these are the people you want to make happy if you want to win the game, if you want to win the tank. And it kind of like speaks to the sense of nationalism that Hitler wanted to instill in the people, and Guido understands that if you don't abide by that, there's going to be trouble.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like kind of similar with the Star of David, like it was associated with the Jews at the time, which like was associated with Joshua and Guido. We see that towards the beginning of the film. But I also think, even though it's not like an actual object, that the riddles and puzzles that Guido and the Doctor kind of go back and forth on were also a form of symbolism throughout the film, because not only was it a comedic aspect that kind of made the film fairly light, even though it was a film about the Holocaust, it served a part of Guido's personality, and it showed like it kind of set the stage for him to make the game he created for Joshua. So it also served as like Joshua's structure throughout the concentration camp because of Guido's personality with his love for puzzles and riddles.
You know, I totally agree, and a lot of those examples of the symbols fall into like one of our major themes throughout the film, that finding the little things in love and life is what makes life beautiful. So Guido's love for these riddles really shows, you know, his carefree, you know, attitude about life.
And like speaking of love, I think some other major themes in the movie are love and the importance of family, especially Guido, Joshua, and Dora. For instance, at the beginning of the film, we see Guido. He doesn't give up on Dora. Like the odds are against him. She's above him in social class. She's engaged with someone else basically. But he knows. He's convinced that she's the love of his life, and he doesn't give up. And then this turns out like the feelings are mutual, and in the end, Dora actually goes against her mother's wishes, and she marries Guido instead of a rich politician out of love.
Plus, Guido makes the whole game up for Joshua out of love to save his innocence.
Yeah, and then Dora also shows her love by getting on the train to the concentration camp, basically acknowledging the consequences just so she can find Joshua and Guido.
Are there any other themes you guys found?
Yeah, I think sacrifice and perseverance could definitely be one, or two major themes, because we see sacrifice throughout it a lot. Dora sacrifices herself and basically gives up the ultimate sacrifice, her life, to find her family. She's willing to do that so she can have her lifetime of happiness with her beloved family. And then throughout the entire film, the entire family, along with millions of other family who are going through the same ordeal, have to find a way to persevere through the concentration camps because they were so terrible. And then Guido's way of doing this just happened to be creating the game for Joshua. And then they use their love for each other to basically provide hope throughout the situation to basically survive.
Yeah, I can tell you one thing that is definitely not a theme, and that would be community. I think that the film does not represent community in any type of way just because people are so divided because people are discriminated against for like their different beliefs and everything. And usually when you think of a community, it's like people that happily kind of coexist together and everyone works together, and people definitely do not happily coexist in the same areas in the movie.
I noticed that too. I noticed all that discrimination and how you could have a German living right next to a Jewish person, and the Jewish person is just randomly gone one day. Mm-hmm. And then the German continues living their lives like nothing happened. Like they never knew them, you know, and it's kind of ironic.
Yeah, so moving forward, it's really obvious that this movie takes on a very humorous tone. So in the second scene of the movie, we get this first glimpse of Guido's amazing sense of humor when I think they just stopped at someone's house that was like selling, like produce, and Dora falls from the top of the barn window after trying to burn up a wasp nest, and she falls right into Guido's arms, and immediately his face lights up and he goes, "Buongiorno, principessa." So, immediately you get like this like great, laugh out loud kind of
mood
feel.
lightener.
Yeah, I really thought that was like super funny, and of course this isn't Principe Guido's last interaction with Dora. There's a ton of scenes where Guido just seems to pop up like wherever Dora is going, and they're all really super funny scenes and like lighthearted.
It always feel like involves them kind of crashing.
Yeah.
In one way or another.
Yeah, no, totally. One of my favorite scenes is when Guido impersonates the inspector from the Department of Education, and he steals his satchel. What was it?
Sash.
That's the word. Thank you. So he steals his sash, and he showed up to the elementary school. Marches all in, and like he's doing like this whole big routine for the kids. He's jumping on desks. He's pointing to his perfect earlobes. Playing with them, and then he goes so far that he strips down to his underwear and he shows them his amazing Italian belly button. So that scene just really cracks me up.
Yeah.
Guido doesn't just use his humor to woo Dora, does he?
No, you're right. So we see this a lot, like in the concentration camp. Right when they're waiting online to get off board the train and then get off. Guido's making like such a big deal how this is going to be like fun and it's going to be funny. And then we also see after his first day of work, Guido comes back to the barracks and he's telling Josue about like the great day they had. They're playing hopscotch and it was like so funny. They were hooting and hollering all day, and he even lost 2 points for tripping, and and everyone thought it was like the funniest thing in the world.
So we see with Guido that his sense of humor produces this pretty obviously humorous tone. So what about his more optimistic qualities and the more optimistic tone that goes with that?
Oh yeah, the film definitely has a very optimistic tone.
Yeah, how about Guido never quitting his pursuit on Dora, even though she is above his social status and is already set to be married? And that sure shows that this film has an optimistic tone to it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, great point, Nora. Guido really never, stops pursuing Dora until she's his, and he's also very optimistic about his own situation. When he first arrives in Tuscany, a lot of people tell him, times are really rough here. He really doesn't believe it. He's like very overly optimistic about the whole situation, and we see this especially in the scene when Uncle Alessio's horses, painted green, and someone writes Jewish horse on it, and Alessio's like, Guido, you gotta start watching out. He goes, oh, what's the worst they can do to me? They're gonna paint me yellow and write Jewish waiter on me?
Yeah. So what actually happens to Guido and Joshua at the concentration camps? Like, I got a little bit confused about that.
Alright, so Guido makes, the whole thing a game, and things are going good, he's very high in spirits, but we do see his optimism, falter. The first day at work, he's kind of a skinny guy, so he's trying to carry this massive anvil, and he's telling his buddy, I'm gonna die in here, I'm gonna put it down. He's like, no, you don't, you're gonna die. But, we also see, Guido really keeping it together, great example is when, they're gonna do work, and he's hiding Joshua in a wheelbarrow, and he sees, the room where they make the announcements over the loudspeaker, and he's like, oh, Joshua, come on, let's go, and he gets in the room, and he makes, like, a big announcement, Buongiorno, Principessa, reassuring Dora that everything's alright, that everyone's, alive, we're gonna make it through this together, I think about you every day, and we're gonna make it through.
So some other tones that I noticed, one tone that I noticed throughout the movie was definitely like a tragic tone. Did anybody else think that?
For sure.
Yeah, I saw it a lot. Well, the one scene specifically was when they were being taken, Joshua and Guido, and it was on Joshua's birthday, and so he doesn't get to experience the traditional things that kids get. Like, he didn't get presents, he didn't get to blow out his candles, and it's kind of sad when you think about it, and it's kind of ironic.
Yeah, and how about the actual concentration camp? Children and the elderly, they were not exposed to manual labor, but they were like killed in the showers, which were actually just gas chambers, so they would like undress and they would die, and which we can assume happens to Guido's uncle Alessio.
The scene where Guido comes across the pile of dead bodies really emphasizes the severity and horrificness of the Holocaust.
You guys all bring up really good points. Really cannot have said it better myself. But Zach, I really like that point you brought up about irony. You guys want to tackle that next?
Yeah, well, like overall, I think just the ending was very ironic. I mean, I was hoping, and I think I can safely say that we were all hoping that Guido was going to make it out alive and the whole family was going to live happily ever after.
That was definitely one of the most ironic, parts of the film. But I think we can even say that even as early as, a few minutes into the film, we started seeing, these subtle hints of irony that really were going to foreshadow, what was going to happen in the end. For example, when Guido tries to get the permit for a shop, the man in the office, his two sons are named Benito and Adolf, and Guido tries asking what's his, political views, and once he hears, his sons are named Adolf and Benito, he's like quickly changed the subject.
Yeah, I also think the scene with the Jewish horse, and Guido denies anything that will happen to him. I think that's certainly after part of it too.
Yeah, and we can't forget about Dr. Lessing.
Oh yeah, super messed up, by the way. Like, how after playing little riddle games with each other, like kids at like the restaurant, and then after he goes to the concentration camp and all the prisoners are getting medical evaluations, and Guido looks at him and answers his last and final riddle. Guido is almost relieved at this point. He's like, oh, maybe he's going to help me out, and to his surprise, he's like, oh, why don't you come be a waiter tonight at the dining hall for us? So Guido's very excited. He's hoping, this is my ticket out of here. He even tells Josué, like, we're out of here, buddy. Like, don't worry, the game's gonna end early. You're gonna get your tank. And the doctor just needs help with another riddle about a duckling or a platypus, and it's just outrageous. It's one of the most disheartening parts of the film.
Yeah, and that's what the film does. It literally does pull your heartstrings, changes your emotions with every scene. And overall, I really enjoyed the film. Like, I think it's been one of my favorite movies. What do you guys think?
I felt that kind of what you both were talking about was that the sense of humor in the movie while kind of keeping it serious at certain moments, and how you have those scenes where you're able to laugh and it's not just this dead serious thing of like depression, but then he sometimes blatantly and then sometimes subtly addresses the issues that were actually going on.
I feel like that keeps you kind of like intrigued in the movie and like you want to keep like knowing what's gonna happen next.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like it was a different type of Holocaust film because all the ones that I've seen mainly have been like extremely, extremely sad.
Like, the whole time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
There
Sad
was dark
music,
the whole
dark.
time. Yeah, very like super upsetting. So it was nice to see like kind of like a more family story instead of just like, well, obviously the Holocaust is horrible, but it was like it was really cool in that aspect. So I disagree with the
It was different.
haters. Yeah, it was different.
The haters.
Yeah.
And it's like nice to talk about it this way because then we can all like bounce off our ideas off of each other. Because I feel like if you just watch a movie and you don't really think about it, like you can just kind of get it. Like, because I've seen this movie multiple times, and I know the first time I watched it, I was just like, oh, like that was like a good movie. But like after talking about it and actually thinking about it, you kind of like pick up on little aspects. So it was like cool to bounce off ideas like with everybody.
You know, I think like the most important thing in the film is it comes down to family, because that's really what, at the end of the day, that's what they have. And Guido is willing to do anything for his family, and he does. He gives up his own life, searching for Dora and protecting Josue. So I think what we can take from this movie and is one of the most valuable life lessons you can learn, that through family and staying together and being optimistic even in the worst situations, there's always some way to prevail.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
Yeah, so I think that's about it.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks.
Okay, we should probably like play it back. I was thinking of this like after I watched. You should probably have like just like done a test